I don't think we have an answer. Should we have an answer? Because we don't have a clear answer for so many years and we still go on as publisher. I think we should for two reasons. A, we as professionals, we need data to plan, to assess what's going on. Each time from the Federation of European Publishers every year, they do this European research. Albert Mann is president director, and they said, can you send us data? And we say, we don't have any. So we need as professionals to have data. This is a good saying, Jeremy. You cannot manage what you cannot measure. And secondly, which is another broader issue, if we talk about culture, if we talk about national policies, bearing in mind that the book industry is the largest cultural industry in Europe, how on earth can you design national policies again without any data? So we have taken an initiative, also with Nico, we have talked this before, to invite Nielsen and to start talking to Nielsen. We thank very much Jeremy Nido for being here, Dr. Hazel Kenyon. They came just for us, just in this fair, and we really appreciate your time and all your effort. It's not a bad place to come, Thessaloniki, that was our hook. But still, nevertheless, we appreciate. Also, my thanks to Andrei, who is the godfather of this relationship. We are flirting Nielsen for more than a year now. With us is Nikos Argyris, who is president of NLV, one of the biggest and respectable associations in Greece of publishers, and Yannis Kranias, who is the vice president of POEV Federation, which is also publishers and booksellers as well. There is a bookseller, Euripides Konstantinidis. He's around, we lost him, he was here just, so he will probably join us in a while. So shall I go straight to you guys? I think this works.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? There's Andre is the godfather of BookScan. I'm the Luca Brazzi, I suppose. Well, first of all, thank Thaden for inviting Hazel and myself to come to Thessaloniki and to help me pronounce Thessaloniki, though I didn't really know how to spell it, let alone. And bringing back our colleague Andre, he met up at an international convention with Thaden. It was only earlier this year, and you know how these international events go. They run on late into the night, and it's fair to say that the plan to hatch a BookScan Greece was probably in the early hours of the morning, but that's possibly the best time when the brain is working. Hazel's here. Hazel's going to talk a little bit about BookScan. I thought I would begin by giving a little bit of a background history, and when I'm in Greece, I thought to myself, hey, I thought we'd go back in time. Well, I didn't know the era, but so that's my little joke. I was rather hoping a few people would find that amusing. But I'm not going back that far, fortunately. I'm actually going back to, over 200 years, to 1820, when this bearded and mustachioed man, he wasn't like that when he was born. In 1858, he founded the Bookseller trade magazine. Now I've got a copy of it here. It's still going. At the heart of the book trade since 1858. And the concept was to pull together all of the publishers' programs and publications into one single place for the booksellers to look at. This hadn't been done before, and it was very successful. He added to this key piece of information just sort of trade news. And one of the trade news at the time was that Charles Dickens was about to go on a tour of reading his books. So that is how the Bookseller magazine started. He realised, and it wasn't until very recently, that publications of the week were in this trade magazine every week. The reason they're not in there now is because the UK publishes 2,000 books a week, and to put all of those into this magazine would upset the postman. You could keep all of your booksellers, or in 1874, Joseph had the idea of pulling all them together and produce a bibliographic data catalogue, which went down very well. It became Whitaker's Books in print. If you come to our offices, we've still got physical versions of them. And I actually looked up a book that I wanted to see that was published in 1900, and there it was in the pages of this book. Right. Joseph's great-great-grandson, David Whitaker, and he was great as well, so that's good. Sadly died a couple of years ago. A great man. He employed me. That was his probably only mistake in his working career. Him and Sally Whitaker believed that the industry needed continuous research. They didn't know how to do it. I worked for Nielsen. They approached me, and I told them how, and we started a service. David was heavily involved in standard book numbering. It was something that he believed passionately about, and he was a big, strong man, and he was quite sort of, he was Marmite. You loved him or you hated him, but he managed to get his feelings felt, and he really was right behind the SBN, which then morphed into the ISBN as we know it. And again, there was a really clever thing they did for books to have an international standard book with an international prefix 978. They're actually, the rest of the industry using barcode wish they'd done that now, because French product selling in the UK has got a totally different barcode structure to it. So the international standard book number was another really, really clever piece of sort of understanding of how the data would be used. The actual barcode is celebrating 50 years. So the ability to actually scan products at the point of till started in 1973, and soon after that barcodes were applied to books at the publisher's cost, but they were willing to do it. And if it wasn't for the fact that there were barcodes on books and the opportunity to scan a till and produce electronic data feeds of sales files, there's no way the book trade could have afforded a retail measurement. It had to be using technology, and the ISBN delivered that product. BookScan started in the UK, it was Whitaker Book Track at the time, and the publishers started using the data. And also the big international publishers, the Penguins, Random Houses, HarperCollins of this world, they also had offices in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. So the Australians came across, came to a presentation that I did, and said, "Where do you get this information from? How can we have it?" So we explained how, and at the time the retailers in Australia were Dimmock's, Angus and Robertson and Collins, the three main ones. They agreed to deliver their data. We had something in place to process the data. The same thing happened in Ireland, and one of my colleagues, Carol, she caught the boat to a very rainy island, and I caught a plane to Sydney, where we set up BookScan Australia in Sydney. So there I was, having left Nielsen, and then a strange thing happened. David Whittaker's son, Martin, wasn't particularly interested in running the business any longer, and sold it to the VNU, big Dutch conglomerate, who then bought Nielsen, and then in 2003 we rebranded. This allowed us a little bit more time, and again, rather like Australia, the Penguin South Africa, Random House South Africa, they wanted a BookScan service. So Exclusive Books and CNA and the various retailers delivered their data. Unfortunately, the reason I'm doing this was slide by slide. We had a really nice slide which we sort of all in one, but we thought that we wouldn't be able to see it all with the detail. So Spain came along in 2005, Italy in 2007, New Zealand, because of the Australia link, in 2008. This is an interesting one. We actually also, people don't really recognise this, we actually measure book borrowings from libraries. And we have a tremendous number of libraries who deliver their borrowings files, and we report on that. It's a very interesting piece of work, and the relationship between what people buy and what people borrow is very interesting. In 2011 we introduced India. And India again is an interesting country because there's a lot of the Indian book sales that there's no way we can measure. They're being sold off the streets. There's the organised and then there's the, they call it the unorganised market. And we weren't able to measure the unorganised market, but the good news is, year by year, the organised market is getting bigger and bigger, and the unorganised market is smaller and smaller. Brazil was great fun. Enjoyed going to set up BookScan Brazil. Mexico, even more fun. Poland was great. We've got a mad Polishman running BookScan territory in Poland, but he rather like Faden knows absolutely everybody and everything, and if you go to the Polish book fair, he stops you in every aisle and introduces you to people. Colombia is literally just hot off the press, but the interesting thing about it is that when we launched and we did a press release, Nikos complimented us on it and said, would you be thinking about doing Greece? Now obviously with Faden on board, the team is getting bigger. So we've had several discussions, and we really believe that we can provide Greece with affordable, and I say affordable because a lot of the way that we collect the data, we process, validate, and release the data has all been done. Investment was made in the 90s, and we've built upon that. So it's and here's a nice slide. It's one of my favourite slides. That's Hazel hurrying me up, by the way. But it's just to say that there's to run the businesses that we run, there's a lot of people required, and that's us celebrating 25 years ago. Over to.
Thank you. So Nielsen itself, the big wide Nielsen. Sorry, I've gone forward one. I'm on it. The big wide Nielsen itself tracks anything that can be tracked, focusing mainly on supermarkets, so toilet roll and chocolate and gin, but our bit does books, which I think is the best bit. Okay, maybe chocolate and gin, but so we track books, and in order to be able to do that, you need that ISBN, as Jeremy talked about, so that unique identifier, which is really where the book trade comes into its own. And in the UK, we host the UK ISBN agency, and so anybody can get an ISBN. If you write a book on your own, or if you're big paper random house and you write tens of thousands of ISBNs a year, you all come to the same place. In different countries, obviously, different agencies are responsible for distributing ISBNs. We have the National Library in Greece that will provide yours. And in Nielsen, what we do is we take those ISBNs when a publisher or even published a book wants to list their ISBN in a bibliographic database. So we have a big data lake of many, many thousands of ISBN records. And what you do as a publisher is you load up that ISBN with all the information about your book, which gives us this huge big database, 47 million English language records that we hold. And then we feed them out globally to e-tailers, retailers, libraries, wholesalers, charities, institutions, and the whole kind of global supply chain is able to work on this ISBN. And then also what we do, which is what we're here to talk about today, is once a book is out there and everyone's looked at your book and realised it's amazing and they definitely want to stock it and sell it and the consumer buys it, that's where we come in. I like the control, don't you touch my thing. So, the bibliographic database, which is really the key behind all of this, say 48 million language records, and we have many different attributes about the ISBN. But key when you're trading books is that price and availability. You want people to know the price of your book and how they can access it. And in order to keep this data up to date on a daily basis, we update this data continually. Over 2 million updates are done a week, and it's not just a person in an office. We have an automated system that does this for us to make sure that data is up to date. And when we think about an ISBN, we think all of the attributes. Your publishers and retailers, you will know the title, the author, the RRP. But actually, if you take all of those data fields that we hold 761 different fields. And when you compare that to something like a can of Coke that maybe has dimensions, colour, type of Coke, they have much, much less than many other different products in the retail world. So we're more complicated, of course we are. And so our database has an API for publishers to look at their books, for retailers to look at the books. I was terrible, I was in a bookshop in the UK, I was asking them to find a book that I needed for my son. The lady couldn't, so I said, no, let me. I went behind the counter, I started accessing the data, I said, this is the book I want, so I helped do her job as well. But you can have the cover image critical when you want to discover your book online. The cover image, all the information about the price, the RRP, the distribution, the reviews, the blurbs, all of this data. And so the way BookScan works is so simple because we have the metadata databases from the retailer. All we need is that ISBN, how many, how much, that's it. So then what we do is we combine that. We go and pull that ISBN and we bring all that information out the ISBN in, and together these two combine to form BookScan. Now our database is predominantly English language records, but if you sell a book in any language, it doesn't matter what language it is, if we can get the metadata from an expert company in that country, which is what we do, we can record that book. Just because it's not in English, it doesn't matter. So our systems are designed and built to cope with non-Latin characters, Greek characters, Arabic characters. So then we have our BookScan database, and so let's look at some BookScan data. The panels earlier today have been fantastic about giving us a review of the markets across the globe, and that echoed everything we see in our data. So we have 12 international territories, and in 2022, 614 million books were sold through the territories that we track. Generally, it's a positive picture. We really see that 2022 was a year of recovery after a very difficult 2020, 2021. Many territories had different conflicting impacts because people were not able to get their books as easily, bookshops had to close, people were locked down. But then conversely, people wanted to read, they wanted those books, it got them through lockdown. So you saw this interesting dichotomy in many of these different territories. Overall, we saw fiction doing really well. You can see, if you can, the number of countries with Colleen Hoover at #1, a book that makes people cry. I haven't read it, I've seen the TikTok, it makes people cry. So many territories still focusing on non-fiction as well. And if we look at the size of the markets, obviously the UK is our largest market, and on the vertical axis we have the size of the market, and on the horizontal axis how well it's performed year on year. And although the UK and Italy are bigger, many of the other territories are hovering between that 50 and 100 million units mark a year, so many smaller territories that we deal with. And when you think about the territories and what books will do well, you can also look at the makeup. Are they predominantly children's markets? Are they predominantly fiction? So we see in Brazil and India and South Africa, markets that are more likely to sell non-fiction books, personal development, and we heard this earlier. Some markets are focused on non-fiction personal developments like India. Other markets such as Poland and Australia, lots of children's books sell in those markets. And then we have Italy and Spain, which are a little bit more fiction focused. So to understand those markets, we need to understand that market mix. And so at this point, we've got a couple of quotes from our retail clients who use our data, and I'm just going to pass back to Jeremy.
You see why I went first. It's difficult to follow Hazel. She presents very, very well. So this, we thought we would just get some stuff from retailers. We do it over the years. We need to make sure the retailers are making good, full use of the data, because there's a lot they can do with it. And as a result, we find that we never lose a retailer. Once a retailer is delivering the data and understands the service, they just stay on board, which is critical because our data needs to be trendable, and when trendable it means it's a consistent set of retailers. So when we try and pull a new territory together, we always start with retailer cooperation. Retailer cooperation means going and talking to the retailer. We've become, over the years, extremely experienced in understanding their potential concerns. Confidentiality is high on everyone's list. The ability to deliver the data, and the recognition from them that all we do is release the data in a consolidated form, aggregated data. So no individual retailer's trading is exposed. That's highly important to them. Less important, but is relevant, is that we don't actually charge the retailers for participating. And the third point, which has worked very well for us, is if you are a retailer who could cooperate, chooses not to, you can't buy the data, you can't access the data. So the incentive is there for the retailers to cooperate. We're pretty good at doing it. As Hazel mentioned, a good bibliographic database is vital. In the UK, we thought we had one, but actually BookScan assisted the database because it wasn't complete, and retailers were sending in ISBNs that weren't on the database. The third point is publishers. We're very open with our business model. Publishers pay for the data, and it is in relation to the size that we measure of that publisher. It's a fraction of their turnover. All the publishers know that we've got this in place, and I'm not sure if it happens in Greece, but certainly in the UK, we have publishers moving from one publishing house to another. There's no surprises when they move. The BookScan cost is consistent, depending on size. How are we doing for time? Well, this is the Greek way. We always, we're experiencing from Thaden at the moment, local expertise is absolutely essential. So at some point we would place a territory manager who works with the publishers and retailers to make sure they're getting value from the data. Media exposure, it sounds a little thing, it's certainly not part of the business model, but it is really helpful to the trade really to have bestseller lists that are authoritative and independent. And it also helps us get retailers on board, because if retailers are not contributing, there's sort of pressure to make the bestseller lists as accurate as possible. And as I mentioned before, a robust processing system is absolutely important. We'll go on to the next one. If we're running out of time, just we've gone through each country. So UK first, we've actually got 125 different retail organisations sending us data. People like Foyles, Asda, Waterstones and the works. And the weekly sales are 3.5 million units per week. If we quickly go through. Quickly, Ireland, next one. By the way, if you'd like a copy of this presentation, we can certainly make it available. So we're going to rush towards the end. So there's a few Greek potential retailers. Okay, so we know things about the Greek publishing market already. We know the number of active publishers, and we know that based on the ISBN procedure, if you have a short prefix, you're a big publisher. You're allowed up to 10,000 ISBNs. So there are 26 publishers in Greece with that. Then the medium-sized publishers, 356, the smaller, 2142, and the very small, the ones that have bought an ISBN prefix to publish up to 10 titles, 11,000. It's perfectly, it's not our data, it's the library's, yeah, the ISBN agency's data.
And then finally, I just wanted to show some data showing one of the largest international titles of 2022. So one of the things we can do is look at the trends within your own country, but also see those titles. So this is Heartstopper, Alice Osman, a UK author, sold 1.2 million units in the UK in 2022, but a further 1.5 million globally. So you really can get these internationally successful authors. And then we've got another quote, and then finally just looking at the market year to date, and obviously we're so keen to find out. We've got this new up-and-coming author in the UK. His name is Prince Harry. He thought he'd start writing books maybe to find a new thing for him to be able to do. So he's done pretty well. Look out for more titles. So we can look, and that was #1 in a number of countries, as well as some bestsellers at Q1 2023. But we hope 23 for the territories we measure is a big success, and indeed for all book markets. And that's us. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you so much, both of you. I was thinking there are so many questions, just the beginning. Even the ISBN office in Greece, that's another story, I presume, a long story. May I ask, and I apologize, I would beg for everything. May I ask for some comments from Nikos or questions, and then Yannis, and we will leave our bookseller for last. You are familiar with BookScan, repeat this. A lot?
I'll make this short, and I don't think it's actually worth dwelling on the value of data. I mean, it's 2023. It's the day of chat GPT. We all need data. So I'm a publisher. We need data. Booksellers need data. What I think Nielsen brings to the table is an objective, level field, and a common, mutually shared value. So when we talk about sales, and when we talk about book sales, I'll just make this clear. Nielsen measures sales at the point of sale. It does not rely on what the publisher said he sold or how many copies were printed. The measurement is made at the actual point of sale, at the till. Isn't that the word? The till. Yeah. So this is valuable. We all see in the Greek newspapers or other media the weekly bestseller lists. These are completely subjective. We all know that. You can see every week a different bookstore reporting such a diversity. I mean, that's anticipated, of course, but you cannot have such a. I mean, we all know that some lists are made like on the top of our head, like, okay, I think I sold so many copies of Colin Hoover and so many copies of Homenidi. I ordered a new box this week, so let's put this on number one. We need to have data, and publishers need data to make plans and to plan what their production will be, what's selling, what's not selling, what the competition is doing. So Nielsen brings that in a very objective way. I will also make a comment about what Jeremy said. I just want to make it clear, super clear, because I think it's very important for Greek publishers how the model works. So Greek publishers, of course, will have to pay a subscription to buy the data from Nielsen. But Nielsen is so honest about that. So it will tell you, you will pay a fraction of your turnover, but not the turnover you report to the Euphoria, to the IRS. It's the turnover that is reported by Nielsen. So if Nielsen can actually measure 50% of the market, because that's how many bookstores participate in the program, you will get charged for that measurement, not what it could be, not what the total revenue of the book market is in Greece. So I think that's a very honest proposition. And finally, although it's something that Repidis and Vivianis will comment on, is that I know many booksellers are very maybe worried about not sharing data, but I think this nowadays it can only be a positive and it can bring only good to the market and to booksellers as well.
Maybe even publishers don't want to share data, not just booksellers. So we have to work on that.
Εγώ θα πω τώρα έτσι χαριτολογώντας για να καταλάβουμε πόσο δύσκολο είναι το να μιλήσουμε στην Ελλάδα για τις μετρήσεις των βιβλίων, ότι μάλλον ο Φέδωνας πρέπει να αντιπαθεί αυτός που έχει βάλει στο πάνελ εδώ πέρα, γιατί είναι κάτι πάρα πολύ δύσκολο. Δηλαδή είναι ένα κενό χαρτί για μας, το μετρώντας τα βιβλία στην Ελλάδα. Θέλω να πω ότι δεν νομίζω να υπάρχει κάποια πραγματικά στοιχεία για το ποια βιβλία πουλούνται, γιατί το μιλάμε τώρα, πόσα πουλούνται, πού πουλούνται. Υπάρχουν και μάλιστα για μια δεκαετία τουλάχιστον σχεδόν, από τότε που σταμάτησε να υπάρχει Εθνικό Κέντρο Βιβλίου, μέχρι πρόσφατα που έχουν βγει δύο έρευνες του ΟΣΔΕΛΑ, νομίζω το 2021 αν δεν κάνω λάθος, και τώρα έχουμε και μια τον Νοέμβριο του 2022, αλλά και πάλι δεν μετράει το ποια βιβλία, αλλά περίπου αρχίζει να διαμορφώνεται να ξέρουμε πώς είναι η αγορά. Μέχρι εκεί φτάνουμε. Δεν υπάρχει κανένα στοιχείο. Απλά υπάρχουν τα στοιχεία που δίνουν οι εκδότες. Μπορεί να πει εγώ πούλησα 50.000, υπάρχουν τα στοιχεία που δίνουν οι εφημερίδες που βασίζονται σε συγκεκριμένα βιβλία, αυτό που είπε και ο Νίκος, αν άκουσα καλά. Οπότε είναι δύσκολο. Στην Πολώνια, που ήταν ο πρόσωπος της Nielsen, δεν θυμάμαι το όνομα του τώρα, να με συγχωρέσετε, κάναμε μια συζήτηση κατά πόσον, Αντρέ, μπορούν να μπουν μηχανήματα στα βιβλιοπωλεία να αρχίσει μια μέτρηση, να ξέρουμε τι πηγαίνει. Το θέλουμε όλοι, το θέλουμε οι βιβλιοπόλες, το θέλουμε οι εκδότες, είτε μικροί είτε μεγάλοι φαντάζομαι, να ξέρουμε τι γίνεται στο βιβλίο. Δεν υπάρχουν τέτοια στοιχεία. Εγώ θα πω έτσι δύο-τρία πραγματάκια που έχουμε συλλέξει σε μια έρευνα που κάναμε για αυτούς που διαβάζουν και δείχνει και μια δυσκολία λίγο το πράγμα. Στην Ελλάδα υπάρχουν περίπου δεν έχουμε ακριβώς ούτε γι' αυτό ακόμα, περίπου 2.000 και κάτι βιβλιοπωλεία. Το πρόβλημα είναι ότι από αυτά τα περισσότερα δεν είναι βιβλιοπωλεία που είναι μόνο βιβλία, είναι βιβλιοχαρτοπωλεία και μάλιστα η πλειοψηφία τους έχουν περισσότερο χαρτοπωλεία και σχολικά παρά βιβλία. Οπότε και αυτό δυσκολεύει ακόμα την έκθεση στο σημείο, κατά πόσον αυτοί θα μπορούν να δώσουν τα στοιχεία. Να πω λοιπόν κάποια στατιστικά ζητήματα που έχουμε συλλέξει. Το Νοέμβριο του 2022 έλαβε γίνει Σεπτέμβριο-Οκτώβριο του 2022, οπότε είναι πολύ πρόσφατη. Είναι μετά την πανδημία. Περίπου ένα 39% των αυτών που αγοράζουν βιβλία αγοράζουν από τα μικρά ανεξάρτητα βιβλιοπωλεία. Προηγούνται ακόμα και σήμερα, παρόλο που υπάρχουν αλυσίδες στα e-shop, τα σούπερ μάρκετ. Το μικρό βιβλιοπωλείο είναι το πρώτο αυτής της πωλήσεις. Για μας δεν είναι αρνητικό, είναι θετικό. Ένα 24% είναι από τις μεγάλες αλυσίδες, είτε είναι σούπερ μάρκετ είτε αλυσίδες που μπορούν να πουλάνε από ηλεκτρονικά και τα γνωστά στην Ελλάδα. Και αν θυμάμαι καλά, αν έχω ένα. Τώρα εδώ, ένα λεπτάκι, είναι περιορισμένος χρόνος και τα είχα λιώσει και ένα 29% είναι από τα e-shop. Είτε είναι e-shop των εκδοτών, είτε των βιβλιοπωλείων. Ναι, είναι 29%. Είναι η έρευνα που έχει γίνει μετά την πανδημία, οπότε έχει βοηθήσει πολύ η πανδημία στις πωλήσεις αυτές. Και μάλιστα αν θυμάμαι καλά, γύρω στο 40% των αυτών που διαβάζουν σήμερα βιβλία έχει γραφτεί σε κάποια πλατφόρμα, είτε είναι της Πολυπία.net, είτε είναι διάφορες πλατφόρμες πωλήσεις βιβλίων ηλεκτρονικά. Παρ' όλα αυτά, ευτυχώς για μας, αν μπορεί να έχουν άλλη άποψη, το 83% των αυτών που ρωτήσαμε που διαβάζουν βιβλία προτιμάνε το βιβλίο στο χαρτί. Είναι μόνο ένα 4% που λέει ότι προτιμάει το ψηφιακό βιβλίο, στη δικιά μας έρευνα τουλάχιστον, και ένα 14% κάπου που δεν πόσο είναι που θέλει και τα δύο βιβλία. Λοιπόν, εμείς πραγματικά θα θέλαμε να υπάρξει και να βοηθήσουμε σε αυτό, το να υπάρξει, να ξέρουμε και εμείς και οι συγγραφείς ακόμα να ξέρουμε το τι πηγαίνει. Και εκεί είμαστε ανοιχτοί να δούμε τρόπους συνεργασίας και να πηγαίνουμε και οτιδήποτε θα θέλαμε να ήταν αυτό να γινόταν και από το κράτος. Αλλά αυτό καταλαβαίνω ότι με τις σημερινές συνθήκες δεν έχει γίνει τα τελευταία 20-30 χρόνια, δεν έχει γίνει πολύ δύσκολα. Οπότε και εμείς, σαν ομοσπονδία, σαν ενώσεις, σαν σύλλογοι, είμαστε ανοιχτοί να δούμε τους τρόπους για να βοηθήσουμε σε αυτό το. Σταματάω εδώ πέρα. Και θα ήθελα και μια επισούλα μετά, αν μπορούν να δοθεί. Πώς μπορεί στα e-shop των εκδοτών, πώς ελέγχεται η πώληση στην Αγγλία. Αυτό.
Καλησπέρα και από μένα. Να πω, θα μιλήσω για την πλευρά του βιβλιοπόλου, λοιπόν, και να πω ότι καταρχήν παρακολουθώ πάρα πολλά χρόνια και την Nielsen και το BookScan και αυτά και ομολογώ πολλά χρόνια ζηλεύω αυτό το οποίο γίνεται σε άλλες χώρες, από την Αγγλία, την Γαλλία, κυρίως την Αγγλία που παρακολουθώ πάρα πολύ έντονα και χαίρομαι πάρα πολύ για αυτή την πρωτοβουλία να μπει η Nielsen BookScan στην Ελλάδα, γιατί το έχουμε ανάγκη. Το έχουμε ανάγκη, όπως είπε και ο Νίκος, και οι βιβλιοπόλεις και οι εκδότες, και εμείς οι βιβλιοπόλεις και ιδιαίτερα οι επαγγελματίες πρέπει κάποια στιγμή σε αυτή τη χώρα να ξέρουμε τι πουλάμε, πώς πουλάμε, ποιες είναι οι τάσεις, τι πουλάει περισσότερο, όχι και όπως είναι με υποκειμενικά κριτήρια τις περισσότερες φορές γίνονται λύσεις οι οποίες μεταξύ αυτών χειρικαίνουν στα διάφορα κυριακάτικα έντυπα. Το θέμα για μένα, αυτό να πω πολύ ξεκάθαρα ότι είμαι υπέρ. 100% και όσοι περνάει από εμάς σαν βιβλιοπωλείο, ανεξάρτητο βιβλιοπωλείο, θα το κάνουμε και με το παραπάνω. Έχουμε κάποια θεματάκια βέβαια σαν χώρα στο κομμάτι του ότι τα περισσότερα βιβλιοπωλεία δεν είναι μηχανογραφημένα. Και αυτό είναι μεγάλο θέμα. Έτσι, και αυτό είναι κάτι που δεν το βρούμε μπροστά μας. Γιατί αν δεν είναι μηχανογραφημένο ένα βιβλιοπωλείο, δεν μπορεί, νομίζω, εύκολα να γίνει και η καταμέτρηση στο point of sale. Οπότε είναι κάποια, άρα και τα βιβλιοπωλεία δεν ξέρω πόσο έτοιμα είναι. Και δεν μιλάω μόνο για τη Θεσσαλονίκη και την Αθήνα, αλλά και την Ελλάδα. Έτσι. Γιατί ας πούμε στη Θεσσαλονίκη και την Αθήνα τα περισσότερα βιβλιοπωλεία ίσως είναι μηχανογραφημένα. Δεν ξέρω πώς είναι η υπόλοιπη Ελλάδα. Και μάλλον ξέρω ότι δεν είναι πολύ μηχανογραφημένα. Άρα αυτό είναι ένα κομμάτι που πρέπει να λυθεί. Και μετά από εκεί και πέρα, το να μπορέσουμε και να αποκτήσουμε μια σφαιρική γνώση των πωλήσεων, των τάσεων, είναι το σημαντικότερο. Τώρα, δεν δέχομαι ότι θα υπάρχουν βιβλιοπωλεία που δεν θέλουν να εμπιστευτούν τις πωλήσεις τους. Πιστεύω ότι αυτό είναι κάτι που πρέπει να ξεπεραστεί, δεν ξέρω για ποιους λόγους. Αλλά αν είμαστε επαγγελματίες σε αυτόν τον χώρο, που θεωρώ ότι είμαστε επαγγελματίες και κοιτάμε το γενικότερο καλό του βιβλίου, του πρόοδου, σε αυτό δεν πρέπει να αντισταθούμε. Άρα, σε ό,τι μας αφορά, they're more than welcome here. Hopefully, they're going to get us in the right direction, because it's been a long time that we are not without any real direction on this part of sales. So, fingers crossed, you'll be here with us very soon.
Thank you. Just a comment. It will be impossible in a utopia to have 500 publishers and 2,000 booksellers. But maybe, and I say that there are fellow publishers, a start can be made with 30 booksellers, 50 publishers. Is it possible? Is it viable? With such a small number, what's the minimum we need? And apologies for the brevity. There was also a question about how do you measure sales in e-shops.
Yeah, we can do...
Last comments. I'm sorry about the time rush. Last comments in the week.
Okay. Yes, as I mentioned with India, we can say that we measure a sector of the market. In the UK, we built it starting with the independents and small chains. But when I say the independents, not all the independents had EPOS. 14% did. And we were able to, by region and size, extrapolate the size of the market. And of course, as more independents bought into EPOS, then the sample got stronger and stronger, and we sort of our weightings reduced and reduced. So we were able to do it that way. If it's not possible to get any data from that sector, then it's just outside of the defined measure. We didn't really touch on book sales through the internet, which I think is what you're asking. Yeah, we've had Amazon since it was a baby, and yeah, it's very easy for the internet retailers to deliver their data, and they do, and they also value it highly. Yes, we cover internet. Hopefully that answers your questions. Well, we've moved forward, as I say, from pretty much the Bologna book fair, and with more people getting involved, with more people wanting this. Fantastic news that booksellers like myself think it's a great idea, because as in our presentation, that's where it all starts. We haven't tested out the bibliographic data, but we're in the beginnings of doing that. And we will put more and more effort into this. We didn't come out here for a jolly. But we thoroughly enjoyed ourselves last night. No, but we are taking Greece very seriously, and we trust we can push it through. It takes, I always say, the gestation period of an elephant between 18 and 20 months. So it won't be here tomorrow, but let's hope that in 2024 we will have something up and running and working.
Ladies and Jeremy, thank you so much on behalf of all different publishers and booksellers here. Thank you, Nikos, Giannis, everybody for participating. Thank you all very much. It's a beginning. Let's see how it goes. We will try. We will do our best. Thank you very much. Thank you all.